The EU's GDPR compliance is set for a reason. It primarily is standardized data protection law. Data protection, as you know, is a very generalized terms. But the unique thing here is it encompasses the individual's identity and privacy, right? So there are various ways it goes with. Some call it the privacy law and stuff. But the whole idea is to make the end user data transparent and measurable. While this sounds simpler, it encompasses a lot of processes and significant business process change in terms of how do you achieve that. So that's the general data protection regulation what we're talking about. How does it impact from an Indian context perspective is that as long as you're dealing with the European Union citizens' data, you're part of that regulation very much, right? So you could be part of the back process piece of it, processing some of this data in different from some of the companies in the front, and then the data lies here. Or you could be dealing as a direct business to some of the European associates, right? In all these contexts, you are liable and you are very much liable for compliance. I fundamentally believe that GDPR just came in as a compliance piece, but the primary premise is, wherever you have these data lying around in your premise, you need to have absolute visibility and control to this data. It necessarily starts with compliance things and visibility and access to this data and knowing where this data lies. So Indian companies are at various stages, I would say. Specifically from a GDPR perspective, I think it's just a starting block. Although I understand the regulation came into effect on 25th of May, 25th of May 2018. For us, it's just the tip of the iceberg. And the fallout of this it's quite interesting, because when you look at GDPR, when you peel the onions, what it expects is that this data, the private data of its EU citizen, should not be used beyond its permissible limit, and it should not be stored for purposes other than for what it was collected, and only for a static set of time. And if you look at the past experiences, right, in the world, as far as sensitive data is concerned, you'll notice that this data has been hacked or gotten into illegal means, not by just attacking the primary data source, but the customer usually keeps a secondary copy of this data all across, right? So the data proliferation in the secondary storage and access is really, really high in our part of the world. Or for that matter in any IT organization. So really now it's all encompassing in terms of how do you control this data proliferation from the primary storage to some of the secondary copies that you're collecting for whatever purpose. It could be for backup, for DR and stuff, and how do you address to that? And our view is very, very simple. As long as you can manage the data that your company provides, right? When I say manage, which means I need to have the right visibility, I need to know what's lying on the production, what kind of data. I need to have a very effective and auditable form of creating a copy for it, right? And once the copy is created, I should have an auditable way of showing why deletion is required or not required. Deletion as it stands, it's not a simple thing. It needs a lot of business approvals to go ahead and do that. So as long as you can make your data visible, manage it, and then activate it, that forms a very strong groundwork for any compliance processes and GDPR. So this is what customers are looking at vendors to guide them in this whole process of having the data visible, managing it effectively and activating it or managing it in the backend. Where CommVault comes into the picture is exactly that. I mean, we are the market leaders in managing the secondary data, or for that matter, the entire life cycle of data. So the time it is generated on the production systems, we have enough intelligence to show why that data is created, what that data is, to the time that help create multiple copies for it for business resiliency, to the last mile in terms of keeping an auditable log in terms of why it needs to be stored, when is it deleted, and what purposes does it serve in its secondary of that. We enable all this end-to-end visibility coming from our perspective. So that really helps take the customer.
For more updates from CXO TV, please like and subscribe to our channel.